Preacher Boy Inc.
I watched the Candace Owens Greatest Lie Ever Sold documentary, so you don't have to. Now, I must say, the documentary was well put together. However, some parts of that documentary just didn't make any sense at all. Now, let's break that John down, y'all. We gonna break it all the way down. Stay tuned.
Gutta And Saved, they can't stand me.
The Greatest Lie Ever Sold documentary came out by Candace Owens a few days ago. A little homie of mine hit me up and said, "Hey, Reese, man, you need to check out this documentary." He's a supporter of Candace Owens, by the way. Y'all know I ain't too pressed when it comes to Candace Owens because, in my eyes, she's like a Kamala Harris and a Stacey Abrams, for the right-wing media. She's a black mouthpiece for racist white folk nonsense and rhetoric. She say the things that they want to say, but they can't say. Just like Kamala Harris and Stacey Abrams and all the rest on the left. They just mouthpiece. They say the things that, those folk on the left want to say, but they can't say. So they use, these black women mouthpieces to, spew out their rhetoric, the stuff that they really want to say about black people. And y'all already know, like I always say, they all play in the same game, just on different teams. It's like the NFL. You got the AFC division, you got the NFC division. They all under the banner of the NFL, but just different teams, same league. Now, as I sat down and watched the documentary, I must say, Candace Owens did a very good job in exposing BLM. She broke down all their reckless spending, all the money that they were spending that they donators donated to the organization. She broke down how they brought these lavish mansions and lavish houses and all that stuff. She pulled up on Patrice Cullors. Patrice Cullors hired her brother, who is a, graffiti artist by trade, he to do security. She hired him to do security on the properties, and she paid him almost $1 million a year. Yeah, $1 million a year. He had, he created some type of security firm after they got all that BLM money, from their donors. And now he's some type of security expert. And she was paying his firm over $1 million a year. She also hired her baby father to do some work. He was doing something, but she also was paying him over $1 million a year. Then Candace exposed, how they were spending. I'm not spending, sending 200,000, to all these different, transgender organizations, programs, and sex reassignment medical procedures and all that stuff. They were sending 200,000 there, 200,000 there. And Candace also exposed how they were giving money to, gay sex workers, prostitution, dancers, and who were struggling and all that stuff, man, and only God knows all the other crazy stuff they was doing with, the money that their donators donated to the organization and to the cause of BLM. And I must say, Candace Owens did a good job in finding all that stuff through BLM's tax returns. BLM, gave all that money to all these rainbow programs and organizations, but didn't give a penny to George Floyd's family nor his daughter. Not a single dime. And real rap, that's foul. That's why I said I never rocked with BLM, because when you went to their website, it actually showed everything they was about, and none of it really was about giving back to the black community or even to any of the victims' family. It was never about them. It was about the folk in the rainbow community. There's a lot of videos on that. Y'all can go watch that. That's not why I'm here, though. Which leads to my next point, by the way. Candace Owens depicted Derek Chauvin, as a hero, and George Floyd as a monster in the documentary, which I believe was just foul too. That was also foul. Candace should be ashamed of herself of how she victim blamed George Floyd. George Floyd was a human being with a very horrible habit who didn't deserve to die in the manner he died. Period. Candace used a very predatory tactic in referring to George Floyd, like calling him Fentanyl Floyd, and George Floyd the Messiah of black people. Now, listen here. Nobody worshiped George Floyd. Nobody didn't put George Floyd on no type of pedestal. Listen here, Candance, and the folk who think like Candance, just because people had empathy and sympathy for George Floyd, it doesn't mean that they was worshiping him. Doesn't mean that they was putting him on a pedestal. We all saw the video of how he died, and it was horrible. You right wingers, it's pathetic, and it's ungodly of how y'all hate George Floyd for no apparent reason. He didn't do anything to deserve the way y'all see him and the way y'all hate him. He couldn't control how BLM monetized off his death and got all that money. He couldn't control how, folk was out there destroying property and protesting, which, by the way, Candace Owens' documentary, it shows the footage of a bunch of so-called white liberals and Democrats out there destroying the property. You ain't really see that many black people out there. You know what I mean? It wasn't the black people who was out there doing all that damage. George Floyd couldn't control none of that. He couldn't control none of that. And it's a shame, and it's disgraceful, and it's ungodly the way y'all are victim blaming George Floyd like he had something, like he directly had something to do with all the stuff that happened after his death. The way Candance Owens victim blamed George Floyd in her documentary is very shameful. It's distasteful. It's very heartbreaking at the same time. Let's say the worst case scenario, George Floyd did die of fentanyl poison, Candance. You know what I mean? Let's say he did. In Candance Owens' documentary, a doctor was interviewed in the documentary who said that a small grain, as small as a man's fingernail, is enough to kill him and Candance in under 5 minutes. He was talking about fentanyl if it's not taken in a controlled setting. Now, think about that for a second. Think about it. In the documentary, the clerk said it took 45 minutes for the cops to come. Now, think about this. If George Floyd just gave them a counterfeit bill, why was he hanging outside the store in his car for 45 minutes until the cops came? Just make it make sense. Make it make sense. If I just knowingly gave a store clerk a fake bill, I'm getting out of Dodge ASAP. I ain't what I'm hanging around for. You know what I mean? Now, real rap. You know what I mean? Just think about it. Would you hang around? Would you hang out there? No. When the cops pulled up, if George knew he just did what he did, why didn't he just pull off? Just think about some of the circumstances surrounding how they formulated this documentary. Just think about what I'm saying here. Now, real rap, just think about it. George, I'm sure he knew how to get down with the cops. He had prior encounters with the cops. He knew if he just passed off a counterfeit bill, he see the cops going in there, why didn't he just pull off? Come on, let's make it make sense. And then they say he was sitting out there making a drug deal. So if his drug dealer was in the car with him, because that's what the documentary say, he was in the car with his drug dealer. When they saw the cops pull up and they was making a drug deal, you really think they were just going to sit there like that? Come on. Just think about it. Now, secondly, check this out. After the cops interviewed, the store clerk, he went to George Floyd, right? George was trying to tell him, I didn't do nothing. He was trying to tell the cop I didn't do nothing. After a few minutes, the cop pulled George out the car, handcuffed him, then put him up against the wall. You know what I mean? Then again, he was, it took a few minutes. They was talking a few minutes. Then the cop took George over there to the cop car. Then they was talking again for a few more minutes. Let's keep track of the minutes here, y'all. We got to keep track of the minutes. George was saying, when he was in the car, when the cop was trying to put him in the car, he said he was claustrophobic, put him on the ground. So the cop put him on the ground, and that's when old boy Chauvin put the knee on George Floyd's neck, ultimately resulting in George Floyd's death. Now, just going off, what the expert said in the documentary, remember, he said all it takes is a small grain of fentanyl, small as a man's fingernail. That's enough to kill him and Candance in under 5 minutes. That's what the expert said in the documentary. Okay, so let's use our brain for a second. You know, I'm not the sharpest man in the class, but let's hypothetically say it was the fentanyl in George Floyd's system that killed him, right? Wouldn't you think that if it was the fentanyl, it would have killed him long before his interaction with the police? Let's just go off the expert's knowledge of the fentanyl drug, right? He said it just take a small grain enough to kill him and Candace Owens in another 5 minutes. So wouldn't you think it would have killed George Floyd a lot sooner than, you know, his interaction with the police? I'm just saying, from the 45 minutes it took the cops to get to the, you know, to the store, the interaction, you know, with George Floyd and the cops before the knee on the neck, again, according to the experts, George Floyd should have died long before the knee in the neck, which was over 9 minutes long by itself. Just think about it. Just think about the timeline and what the expert said in Candace Owens' own documentary. You know, if the interaction with George Floyd with the cops was over an hour, you know, George Floyd should have died long before the knee on the neck. And then even think about this. Let's say the knee on the neck situation. It was over 9 minutes. He should have died within 5 minutes of that 9 minutes. Just think about it. I'm just trying to get y'all to use your brain. That's it. Now, what's my solution? Leviticus chapter 19, verse 16 says, do not spread slanderous gossip amongst your people. Do not stand idle by when your neighbor's life is threatened. I am the Lord. George Floyd's life was snatched from him for the world to see, you know, and people like Candace Owens and those on the right wing is slandering his name, saying he died from fentanyl, as if we all didn't see the video with our own eyes. Listen here, y'all. Your enemy, my enemy, our enemy, the devil, is very clever. He will tell you that a knee visibly on the neck of a man for over 9 minutes didn't kill him, but a drug no one ever confirmed that he took did kill him. Just think about that. Hey man, I thank y'all for rocking out with me. It's your boy Reese Johnson. This is the Gutta And Saved podcast, man. Do something for Gutta And Saved today, man. Go to our merch store. Go to www.gasmerch.com. Check out what we have in inventory. I guarantee you won't be disappointed, man. I'll holler at y'all on the flip. Peace.
Gutta and Saved, they can't stand me.